Right now, it's showtime. How about a great big round of applause?
All right, we're going to put this one up now, and we're going to get into it now.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Headlines with Harris. It's Thursday, October 22nd, and we're about to jump in on the phone right now. We're going to have Admiral Joe Sestak. Admiral, you with us?
I sure am. Hi, is this Jeff?
It is.
It is great.
Great. So we just threw you on air. We just started the show up. And first off, how is everything going? We haven't spoken to you for a little while, and we know that you're kind of reoccurring, probably about a month since you've been on the show.
I think it's going great. I'm enjoying the walks. You know, after I did that 422-mile walk across Pennsylvania, I announced my candidacy to show people I wanted to earn their trust here in Pennsylvania by walking in their shoes, so to speak, in order to let them know I can listen to them and see their hopes and their concerns. I got called or emailed, or people were Facebooking, say, come to our place. So I went to Erie. I was just finished a walk in Indiana last week, and then this week I just walked between Easton, 18 miles further on, stopped in Allentown, and did an event on community colleges, small businesses, concerns that we have here in Pennsylvania. It's going great.
And speaking of that walk, I was going to say there's one thing for sure with all the press releases and everything that has been emailed and sent out and the Facebook posts is that you have to be tired. You know, you have that 422-mile walk. Now you have that 422-plus tour. And now these 18 miles from Easton to Allentown in Lehigh Valley yesterday.
Well, let me tell you, when I had to walk on the ground in Afghanistan, because I headed the Navy's anti-terrorism unit for a brief mission there near the beginning of the war, that walk was really tough. I remember we were walking in an area where people didn't know if the mines from the previous war of the Soviet Union had been swept. Nah, this one it's a solid walk. I run about 3 miles every morning anyway, except the days of the walk, and so it was hard some nights. For example, I had to do 3 days of 30 miles each, and those, quite honestly, were extraordinarily tiring, and I was frigid one day, because this was in March, walking over one of the mountains in Franklin County, and I just crawled in the motel bed that night and slept in all my clothes, bundled up, and put the other blankets from the other bed over me until I woke up in the morning.
And, you know, you had touched on it before, and it was community colleges. And reading through some of the press releases before you came on the air today, Admiral, and, you know, the importance of community college in Pennsylvania, and maybe you could even touch on there is a lack of community college compared to the national average.
It is. Jeff, we have 5% of all our colleges community colleges. But in America, the average is 25% of all colleges. In fact, 62% of all American who are in college or in a community college. Here in Pennsylvania, it's about 28%. And I bring this up because manufacturing is coming home from China. For the last 7 years, wages have gone up 15% every year in China, and shipping costs are up at the rooftop right now. I have a friend who's closed 3 factories already to China, and they're coming home. And we need the manufacturing skills in our human capital ready to go. And community colleges are a low-cost way to begin to earn those skills, from welding to nanofabrication. And if you want to go to 4-year college, great then. And that's why this is important. So we're ready to fill the 5 million jobs that we are predicted we're going to need, and if we don't train more people, we'll be a deficit by 2022 for these manufacturing jobs.
And we had talked about your walk, and at part of that walk earlier this week on Tuesday, you discussed the lack of this community college issue within the state and other higher education issues from your book and the book we had talked about from before. So at that event in Easton, what exactly did you focus on from your book?
I focused in Easton on these community colleges first and foremost, and then after I went through them and the importance of growing more community colleges here and expanding them, because it's a great first step, or the step, into the higher wage jobs to provide for your family, restore the American dream. I then talked about higher education, of going the whole 4 years, because the biggest deficit in America almost is our is our college loans. $1.2 trillion. The average youth graduating from college has $30,000 in debt. And so they're living with their parents. They're not buying a home. They're not buying a car as they get their first job because they can't afford it paying off their debt. So I talk there in Easton of how the rate can be cut in approximately half by not having the government make $127 billion in profit from the loans they give youth because they have it based on the wrong interest rate. It can be zero and no loss to the government if they have a different interest rate. And I walk through how to do that and how colleges have to control cost. And I walk through that at that Easton event so that college 4 years becomes affordable for our youth.
And you walked through all those issues, and then you physically walked to Allentown, 17, 18 miles, and then you discussed something else on Tuesday. And that was small business growth rate, in Pennsylvania, which is half the national average.
That's right, Jeff. It's the other side of the coin. First, you need the great youth of America with a proper education and training, which we just discussed. The other side of the coin is the small businesses that provide 70% of all new jobs. And over the last 40 years, as you said, the small business growth rate has been just about half the national average. And therefore, over the last 40 years, if you look at the census data, our job growth has been about half the national average. Kids aren't staying here if the job opportunity is twice elsewhere. And that's why we've become one of the more senior, older states. And so spurring both community colleges to get the artisans ready to take the jobs and the small businesses to grow, because 98% of all manufacturing firms are small business in America. If you can get them access to capital to start up and relieve the regulatory burden on small businesses, which is 40% higher cost than it is for a large business because you can't spread the cost over a large workforce, then you begin to start up the amount of small businesses we need here in Pennsylvania.
And I don't mean to jump from event to event, but I really want to gauge listeners and give them an idea of kind of how you are going from one event to the other, walking in between. And now this is all part of that 422-mile walk across Pennsylvania. But the interesting thing is it's not just Pennsylvania. As you had mentioned, it was Indiana. And then you're going to be traveling to Bloomsburg.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's all in Pennsylvania, all right? I did that 422-mile walk in March from the New Jersey border to the Ohio border. Then I started walking, doing my book tour by chapter and chapter, Erie and other places. Now I'm walking between cities of Pennsylvania. And just like you said, I walked from Homer City to Indiana in Indiana County in Pennsylvania. And there I did an event at the first place on veterans at an American Legion and talked about how we're not taking care of veterans, how Pat Toomey, our senator, actually voted, after voting to send us to war as a congressman to Iraq, he's voted against every single Veterans Affairs bill, every appropriations bill up through December. And so I then said, what do we have to do to take care of our vets? And then I walked to Homer City, where a young man, 20 years old, had bought a company at 17 to repair vacuum machines. And now he's expanding into Pittsburgh at 20 years old, of how, again, I wanted to stress, small businesses are really how we create jobs, because they create 70% of all new jobs, and why we have to spur them, and how my book lays out we can spur their growth.
And with that walk, I know that tomorrow you have a few events that are taking place and in Bloomsburg. And the first one is your policy proposals, chapters in your book about higher education.
Yes, I am actually going to be at Bloomsburg College, and I'm going to be sitting down and talking with the students, the faculty, and others there, this higher cost that has burdened us in these past decade plus of our youth as they graduate. If inflation continues for education like it has, higher than food inflation, higher than any type of inflation for any other product in America, we are going to have only the rich able to afford college. And, we here in Pennsylvania understood from our very beginning that everyone needs to be educated. One of our first governors in 1680s, before we even were declared a United States of America, established a school and said everyone will attend. The rich will pay a reasonable fee, but the poor shall attend for free, so that all can contribute to the common weal, the commonwealth. And that's why education is so vital. Again, I want to walk through with them how even colleges who are getting public money, like Pell Grants, Stafford loans from the students who go there, that if they aren't controlling inflation below the cost of normal inflation, that is inflation for education below the cost or at least the cost of normal inflation here for food and automobiles, then they should not be able to gain the benefits of all this public monies coming to them via the students with their loans and Pell Grants. They have a job to do to control cost as the suppliers of education.
And again, we're speaking with Admiral Joe Sestak. And Admiral, before, I know we only have limited time with you this afternoon, but before we let you go, we know about these events that are taking place. You had touched on them tomorrow and the few things that are going on tomorrow in Bloomsburg. But what can we look forward to coming up, over the weekend, in the upcoming weeks and months, as the seasons start to change with the campaign and with Admiral Joe Sestak?
We are going to continue to walk in people's shoes of Pennsylvania. We are headed out to Allegheny County. I'm going out to Fulton County. I am going to be wherever it takes us in order to talk with the people of Pennsylvania. I'll be walking from Montgomery to Bucks County and constantly talking about issues and policies. Too few do that. And so I want to make sure everyone understands that I believe the biggest deficit we have in America today, Jeff, is not the national debt. It's the trust deficit. We don't trust rightly our political leaders of either party in Washington, D.C. And when Washington, D.C. wanted to direct and control my campaign, I said, no, I'm not your guy then. I want people to understand that these are the policies, having listened to Pennsylvanians and continuing to listen to them, that I will then stand for as I walk in their shoes in Washington, D.C. It is as a U.S. Senator, hopefully. It is not about party. It's not about type. It is about people, the people of Pennsylvania. And I'm willing to be held accountable for bringing about those policies, because on page 17 of my book, I actually have a contract at the bottom that says, finally, this is your contract with me to hold me accountable for bringing about these policies to help restore your American dream. And then I sign it right there on page 17, the introductory chapter.
Well, Admiral, we want to thank you again for your time and, consistently calling in on a monthly, if not, few weekly basis, and sharing all this information and everything with the listeners of Chester County, of WCHE 1520. And of course, we will post everything that we have as press releases and events that are going on within the county and areas surrounding the county on our Facebook page and on our website. So again, Admiral, thank you.
Thank you, Jeff, for having me on with the opportunity to talk with the public I would love to serve.